let's not lose any talk because I want to keep this at least 30 minutes. But what's up? What's up? Just took a 3-0 lead in the Eastern Conference Finals. Behind one of the most behind one of the most dominating performances by the Heat and by one of the most sorry and awful games I've ever seen outside of the Phoenix Suns in elimination games by the Boston Celtics. John, going into this game, my mindset was that you come out, you throw the first punch, you try to get a nice size of lead, and while they try to climb back into it, you at least keep it close so in the fourth quarter, you can force them into making some mistakes, and you take this game. I thought this was going to be close. I've had some respect for Boston in the sense that I thought they were going to come back and at least, have some type of fight in them.
I think we all did.
Who told me to think that the Boston had any type of fighting them to come back in this series? Who told me to have any type of respect for Jason Tatum as a performer when he's back against the wall? Who told me to have any respect to give Grant Williams his respect for going at Jimmy last game? Who told me to have any respect for Jaylen Brown and thinking he can bounce back? Who told me to have any respect for Joe Mazzulla as a head coach? I don't know who told me to do that. Maybe I'm just too nice to these guys. Gabe Vincent was our leading scorer tonight with 29. 7 of 10 from 3. Duncan Robinson given 5 of 7 from 3. We came in here in the fourth quarter. Omer Yurtseven and Jovic was giving them buckets.
Big time.
It's just, I don't know what to say, man. I don't know what to say.
I know what to say. This Miami Heat team is shooting the leather off the ball right now. 54% from 3. And now everybody's going to say it. Shooting luck. Bullshit. They're missing Tyler Hero.
How many series do you have to do this?
And I say to myself, the reason the Miami Heat were not good this year offensively in the regular season was because they could not make three-pointers. But they had so many credible shooters that now are starting to get going. And when you see Gabe and Duncan today both going 7-11 from the field, you're like, okay. But then you talk about what Duncan's doing as a playmaker, the passing, two-bam, the lobs, all of it. It stood out to me as well. And then you have Kyle Lowry. He had himself a donut in game 2. Tonight, he plays better. He did have 5 fouls, which was impressive. But at the end of the day, for the Miami Heat, they're the most complete team, I think, in the Eastern Conference. And they may be the most complete team against Denver because as a Nugget fan, I've watched them be 6 or 7 guys deep all year. But with the Heat, they're truly 8 guys deep comfortably. And when one of the 2 shooters is missing shots, you're not losing something because you have Strus or Duncan. Duncan today was awesome. 5-7 from the three-point line is ridiculous. And it's so great to see him finally just getting the confidence back and them utilizing him so well. It's changed the entire dynamic of this offense. Everything looks like it's back to 2020 now.
It looks even... I'm telling you, this is flowing even better than 2020 did in that bubble. We weren't even shooting like this. Like, at least in 2020, we were a decent offensive team overall in the regular season, and we survived on our three-pointers. So at least when you came in the postseason, you expected us to at least shoot semi-well. This year, we shot so dog shit for a majority of the season. Of course, in the second half, like after the All-Star break, there's that little jump there with giving Kemba love. But we shot so dog shit that going to this playoffs, we needed to shoot that lights out to be able to win. To even get people thought we need to shoot that lights out to even get a game off the Bucks, much less beat them in 5. And for the one, I feel like this team just loves playing with our emotions. They love playing down to their competition so freaking much because there's no reason why that Knicks series should have went to 6 games. There's no reason. And again, of course, there's Jimmy getting injured, obviously, and Jalen Brunson decided to go Superman. Speaking of that, with how the Heat have done to the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics, I have so much more respect for what Jalen Brunson was able to get done to be able to even take this team to 6. Because look at how the other guys are handling this team, the flurry that they're throwing at you.
My man JP was playing 3-on-5 out there doing the other that series and still giving Miami buckets.
Yeah, get buckets in Cancun. Not too much.
But what do you think as a Miami Heat fan? There wasn't much to take away from this game. It was just a thorough ass kicking. And by the end of the third quarter, I was already tuning out of the thing. Miami was just way better offensively. And the Celtics, they haven't been able to keep up. For what was the number 1 ranked offense the first half of this year, we've all praised Jason Tatum. Today he has himself a 6 of 18 performance on the road. Jaylen Brown, meanwhile, 6 of 17. And then off the ball, we're still seeing a lot of those woes. I wonder if because of this injury he sustained last game, it's just like mentally he's just not physically there, and that emotionally is really just way. How do I even describe it? It's completely taking this Boston Celtics team out of it from a mental standpoint. But what do you think as a Miami fan, looking at Tyler Hero breaking his hand, Victor Oladipo tearing his patellar, Jimmy Butler playing through an ankle injury, getting by it, and yet you have still found yourself in what is now one game away from the NBA Finals?
Three things: continuity, elite coaching, and at the end of the day, playoff experience. These guys have been in these positions before. Gabe has been here since the bubble. Max Strus has been here for the past 3 years. Cable was here last year. These guys, the guys that are performing right now, have been in these situations. They've had their down moments in these situations, and they know how to recover. They worked on their game, and of course, in the regular season, we've had injuries, all of those things that were out of whack. But these guys had their games in regular season where they've shown that they could still do this. It was just incrementally, and it wasn't on a consistent basis like this. The moment Tyler went down, it was the next man up mentality, and somebody else had to come and step up for Miami to at least have a chance in some of these series. And instead of one person, it was everybody. Everybody decided to take the reins and start actually fighting. And it was fully behind one man over there that breathes heat culture, and that is Jimmy Butler. He didn't. He played well today, but he was less efficient than he normally is, 5 for 13. But he didn't. Man didn't care. 16 points, and was out. Didn't even touch the game in the last, I think, 14 minutes of it. So it's just honestly, it's just that this team is just built a lot different than whatever Boston could produce. Is built a lot different than what Milwaukee can produce. Every single thing that Miami Heat are great at, one of these teams lack. Milwaukee Bucks lack the elite coaching the Miami Heat had. No matter the best players you have, the Heat were able to scheme you out of that series. Um, the the New York Knicks, I don't care what anybody says, the Miami Heat, I think the Miami Heat are a more talented team than they are. And overall, the Miami Heat were just more battle tested in these moments to perform than they are. And as of right now, the Celtics, we've been calling them frauds ever since the first time we went to 6 with Atlanta. That was the big glaring red flag for everybody that they're not ready for this moment. And after Philadelphia, that's another thing. This looks so much worse on Philadelphia that they blew a 3-2 lead to these guys specifically. It looks so much better on Joel Embiid. You let that Jason Tatum drop 51 on your head constantly in the pick and roll. But I digress. This isn't a hate on Philly stream. But
that's why you and I gave the Celtics damn near zero credit when they won Game 6 and 7.
Exactly. Even that 51 performance, yes, it was great, but I'm just like, it looked a little too easy out there. Like some of these looks you're not getting on Miami. And the first game after Miami sat on the 3-point line and pushed them off of it, and they recorded Jason Tatum recorded 3 straight turnovers, even though he had a pretty good game. That should have been warning signs that down the stretch, if the game is close, you're probably going to lose that game. For the next game, for them to do the same thing and Jaylen Brown not show up, that should be another big red flag that, hey, this may be a consistent problem that the Celtics just can't flip around and scheme their way out of. And for it to be like this, for them to lose all fight after that, is just honestly disappointing. And for anybody that wants to blame Joe Mazzulla, tell me right now, what could he have done today? What else could he have done today to help any of this? How many times did the man have to call?
They went out with no pride today. And emotionally, he is not the same guy Ime Udoka was. Like, coaching is so important from a confidence standpoint, but also holding your guys accountable. And it feels like Joe Mazzulla's message is not resonating to this team. He's 34 years old. He had himself a great regular season, but he
Isn't
lacks
Al Horford
experience.
older than him?
Yeah, I've said that multiple times on like every single show or video I make. He is younger than one of their starters. So obviously, he's going to be a little bit less hands-on than Ime Udoka. He's more light, loose with it, not calling the timeouts and big stretches. And that's why for a Miami team that's so on top of it, so witty, that they don't have those extended stretches where shit just hits the fan. And there was one stat, I don't know if I told you this. If I did, stop me. The Miami Heat in this postseason are 6-2 when they find themselves down by 10 points.
We talked about this on last stream.
How crazy is that? Because now when you get yourself in these games where you're the first one to punch, you're like the Tennessee Titans. You're playing with that lead, and it's hard for you to give it up because of how balanced they are on both ends of the floor.
They play every possession like their life freaking depends on it. I remember that one where we got the steal and they threw it up to Caleb and they threw it a little too far. He sprinted to catch up to it, hit Jimmy on the baseline. Jimmy threw it out to Max Strus, transition 3, timeout by Boston. Those are the things that swing games, those extra effort plays. If that was on Boston's side, that would have went out of bounds, and that would have been out of bounds. Or even if they caught it, nobody on that team would have the vision to actually hit back for your trailer to hit a 3. Like, honestly. And the thing about Missoula's whole philosophy is that you can't blame him for this game, but yes, letting your team figure it out on extended stretches is like a Phil Jackson type of thing that he used to let his teams do. But the problem with doing that is Phil Jackson had Michael Jordan on his team. The problem is Phil Jackson had Kobe and Shaq on his team. That's the reason why Phil Jackson was able to get away with doing that sometimes. You don't get away with doing that when you have guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, that even though they've got some success in their career, it's strictly off the fact that they're just that talented and not in the fact that they've been able to perform in tough moments before. So
what is the
that's
historical comparison for this Miami Heat team?
none.
Is it
There's
Pat
none.
Riley Knicks or is it the
Pat Riley
Pistons?
Knicks. The Pat
Which
Riley Knicks thing.
iteration of the Pistons, if so?
The Pat Riley Knicks thing is the problem because one, it was lockout year, so it was only 50 games, and only 6 games separated the first seed from the 8th seed. So it wasn't really that big of a gap of talent level. So yes, they did spank us in the first round, but you can't really compare this Miami Heat team to what that was. This Miami Heat team was 3 minutes away from being was not even being in the playoffs. 3 minutes away in that Chicago game. They got destroyed against Atlanta on the glass, and they even look like they have the will to compete. So for them to do what they're doing right now, there's literally no comparison. There's literally no comparison anywhere.
Okay. I think from a toughness standpoint, this is the closest thing to the Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace Pistons. The difference is that Piston team didn't have a top 5 player in the world. They had a very balanced group. Jimmy Butler right now is establishing himself as not just a top player in the world, one of the 2 best players in the Eastern Conference.
I never ever want to hear those Jimmy Butler, Paul George, Jason Tatum conversations
DeMar
anymore.
DeRozan, was he ever compared to DeMar DeRozan?
He was. They were in the same realm. I don't want to even sniff those comparisons anymore. The fact that you can feel like this team just feeds off of whatever energy he has on a night in, night out basis. And the fact that even when Jimmy is shooting this, because he was shooting this bad last game, and in the fourth quarter, he get you multiple buckets back to back, and that's why his shooting percentage looked as good as it did. He didn't even need to do that today. He didn't need to do that because he didn't have to be in the game. He literally just was playing as a cog in the offense and let everybody else do what they had to do. The moment I realized this game was done, to be honest, is we weren't even up by double digits yet, but it was on the pick and roll. Gabe Vincent stepped back. Marcus Smart put his shoulder in him, got a floater off the glass. I'm just like, there was literally no effort to get back in that play from anybody to even contest that floater. Like immediately, I'm just like, okay, yeah, this game is about to get away from them really fast, but he can hit some shots. And the fact that the first punch was the knockout punch, the fact that you couldn't recover from the first one at all, it's not the fact that you went up by 8 and you came back and then they hit you with another flurry, and at that point your just shots weren't dropping, and then that's when the first punch, the first sign of adversity is when you fold. That Kevin Durant trade should have happened. I know they're kicking themselves for not sending him Jaylen Brown away for Kevin Durant when that was on the table.
I don't know. That's a whole different can of worms for the Boston Celtics that they'll have to solve this offseason if Jaylen Brown doesn't extend for the $295 million that is eligible to him.
Possible.
Pardon?
Coming back, they put themselves in the worst position possible. Really.
How so?
After 7 years of this consistently, I don't know how many times you're going to be like, give them another year and let them grow. And if this is going to be the mental toughness that you have from this, even I know they're young, but
they've made the conference finals in 4 of their 6 years together.
Whenever they hit any type of adversity, they fold like paper mache.
I mean, the 1 year Tatum didn't make it to the conference finals, outside of his sophomore year, was a season where Jaylen Brown underwent surgery. This Celtics team is so damn, at least in the Eastern Conference, accomplished. They just haven't climbed the last hump, which is an NBA championship. To me, I don't think it's doomsday for them at all. Like, this was a bad series. It'll probably end in 4 or 5 games, but this is a rookie head coach with a team that's trying to rebuild their identity and their image a little bit. And he's trying to put his new imprint on the team this year, right? I think they're going to move into next year. And assuming Jaylen Brown does extend as number 2, they're going to be better next postseason. But I want to focus a little bit more on your Miami Heat.
Mm-hmm.
Is Jimmy Butler making himself a top 10 small forward of all time with this shit?
I've been thinking about the spots Jimmy would move up in all-time rankings with some of the things he's doing right now, and I haven't really thought in depth with it. Right now, small forwards off the top of my head is obviously LeBron, Larry Bird, Kevin Durant. You have Kawhi Leonard in there somewhere.
Dr.
Down
J, Scotty,
Dr. J, Scotty.
Rick Barry, Finals VP.
Yeah, you have George Gervin was a small forward. Was he a shooting guard?
He's more of a two, but
Okay.
I'll pull up my rankings
Um,
and I'll list off some guys to you, and I'll get a general feel for what you have them.
yeah, I don't want
Where
to be
you have
prisoner of the moment, but I'll try to be out. Let's try to be as unbiased as possible, because of course Jimmy's
right.
regular season numbers don't look as crazy as some of those guys.
And we also got to keep in mind Jimmy's 33 years old, so he's still playing. Paul Pierce isn't. Paul Pierce or Jimmy Butler, you think he can pass him up if he, let's say he beats the Nuggets in the finals? Would he?
Paul Pierce, yeah.
Carmelo Anthony.
For me, yes, but for a lot of the masses, the thing with Carmelo is the fact that outside of Denver, he never really had the team around him to compete like that. And there's
Which
very
is
few
on
guys
him.
in NBA. Huh?
Which is partially on him.
Yeah, but there's very few guys in NBA history that could be the scoring hub for a championship level team. And Carmelo was definitely one of those guys in the prime of his career. And there's very few guys that can do that when the main thing and probably the only real thing they do in the court is score the basketball. That takes a special skill. Like you look at Zach LaVine, he can put up similar regular season numbers, but the way Carmelo scores the way he scores, the time how timely he is in recognizing when he needs to actually get into his bag and actually get some buckets is completely different than the ways certain guys can, because he can do it automatically whenever he wants to. Certain guys, you know, they have to pile up the numbers throughout the game. So yes, still yeah, above Melo, but I still have some respect for Melo.
And I'm probably confusing you because I'm asking this from a legacy perspective, but from a player
Oh
evaluation
yes,
standpoint,
yes.
Jimmy's a more complete, well-rounded player than Carmelo, given his defensive versatility, the off-ball play, and at the same time, he doesn't need the ball in his hands to make an impact. And we've seen that this postseason where his three-point percentage gets higher and higher. James Worthy is an interesting one. I think this is the point where it's like, okay, Jimmy needs a championship to actually surpass a legend like him.
Yeah, he does. I think small forward wise to get him, if he does get a ring, yes, he cracks the top 10. But I would say my thought was the all time debates. Like, does he like people either have him small forward or shooting guard? And my thought is if he gets a ring today, definitely past guys like Clyde Drexler. Most I would say probably with how he's looked the past 4 to 5 years, maybe put him past Reggie Miller.
Well, those guys are twos. I have them as.
Yeah, but that's the thing. People have Jimmy as a 2 or a 3. But
Right.
let's get to some of these chats real fast. Zeke, it was people saying Robert Williams is better than Bam. That was last year, and I don't know who the hell what people were seeing. Today Bam only had 13 and 3, but some of those dunks, he literally he wanted to put Tatum in a coffin on that one. Let's see.
He's not playing around.
Kobe, the Heat have been in a lot of cold games throughout the years, and their conditioning are two things people don't talk about enough, that the Heat have been better than other teams at, because a lot of teams are tired. Wasn't a tired thing for the ball. Yes, I understand that the Heat conditioning and all that. That is a definite part of them, but the Celtics weren't tired today. They just have no heart. They literally have no heart. The Heat had to go through the play-in to get here. They have more reps on their body than anybody else in the playoffs left. Like
the Celtics have heart, but they don't have resilience on the level of Miami. Like, this is my issue. The Celtics are not frauds because they lost to Miami. The 76ers are frauds who lost to the Celtics. But Boston has folded against a Miami team that's just way tougher. And I think emotionally, they just worn them down. And if you're Jason Tatum and if you're Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and you can feel we don't have it in us to beat Jimmy Butler, that's deflating. And I think game 2 was the realization, oh, wow, we don't have it.
Yeah, I think in those situations where it feels like everything's you're back against the wall, they just don't have the resilience to show up in those moments. While in time like when Jimmy last year against them in a game 6 and in a game 7, when he needed to show up for his team to even have a chance at winning the series, he gave you 47 and 35 and almost put you in the NBA Finals because of it. Yes, they don't have that type of resilience, but I'll still stick on the side of they don't really have that type of heart today. Because if they had that type of heart, the thing with Grant Williams wouldn't have been Grant Williams doing it the other day. The thing is, today in this game, you would have seen if they had some type of heart, you would have seen at least some type of hard foul or something within this game to show that at least they are pissed off at themselves the fact that they even put themselves in this position. The fact is that this team simply just, even with the dog that is Marcus Smart and things today, after this game continues slips out of your hand, instead of getting back on defense, instead of doing the little thing to at least give yourself some chances, you're complaining to the refs about every single call that you feel like they're missing. You're constantly looking for a call or some type of bailout from somebody else. You miss a
Right.
shot and you're running down to the defensive end with your head down, and the Miami Heat is running it down your throat. And by that time, you're not even ready set up defensively to even do anything about it.
What do you think of the Celtics shot quality today? Because they made just a paltry 26% of their threes after having a poor shooting performance in game two, given the regular season standard. Are they getting good
This
enough
has been
looks? They're just not falling?
this was the worst. This was the worst game Miami had at guarding their three. They had a lot of pretty open looks this game. Maybe I need to go back and probably check cleaning the glass to make sure I'm right. But it looked like they had a pretty good amount of clean looks today. Um, and they were hitting them in the beginning of the game. But I think as the Heat went on a run, they just lost confidence and they went like over 12 straight because they just couldn't hit a shot. It's just one of those moments where a good shooting team just runs in a rut and they just can't hit anything. But they went over 12 on that mark. But the shot quality they were getting was very good. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were getting good shot attempts. Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon were getting some good open threes. Jaylen Brown and Al Horford airballed two. Jaylen Brown airballed twice, and Al Horford, I'm pretty sure, airballed twice.
What was the air ball meter today? Was it 5? Was it 6? They had
I
at
think
least
so. I think it
3.
was 5 or 6.
Um, Tatum and Brown went a combined 1 of 14 from beyond the arc. That's the issue with Boston. Like, to talk about them now, why I thought the Celtics weren't going to go to the finals this year is because they're too reliant on the shooting variance. And when it's in their favor, like we saw late in that Philadelphia series, they're going to kill you in flurry. But when the shots aren't falling and you're relying on really Brown and Brogdon exclusively as your two reliable mid-range assassins, and even then Brogdon has not quite been a mid-range assassin in the last couple of games, then you're a little bit too one-dimensional offensively. And the Celtics' issue has not been the defense to me, though the Heat hung up 128 points in them today. It was the fact they could not match them when they came out nice and hot early, with Kevin Love making a couple of shots pretty quickly. He leaves this game with an ankle injury. I didn't see the report on whether or not he'll be good to go. But the Celtics' issue is offense. The second part is, okay, Robert Williams maybe cooked and drop coverage. Al Horford's not making impact when the shots aren't going in. He was negative 21 today, and he had 1 rebound in 19 minutes. That's disgusting. Despicable, truly, from your center. But really, the Celtics' biggest issue is they need someone else, a playmaker that can really get into the teeth of a defense to open up more looks and also can actually score from all 3 levels, because Brown's the only one, and he just has not looked right the last couple of games. I don't know what it is, but this is the guy people are proud enough to be first team All NBA. Like, I heard some of those discussions. I was like, okay, well, if you look at the stats, yes. But when we really dive on deep, I don't see all that hype. I actually said this on Twitter. To me, Jaylen Brown is a more adorable version of Zach LaVine. That's cool. Like, it's a really good player. But to me, it's not the
Hey, you
best
may have
Robert.
cooked on that one. You may have cooked on that one. Hey, you may have cooked on that one.
In way
But
better circumstances, of course, because he's
just
drafted into Boston.
yeah. Right now, today, I looked at the numbers. They destroyed us on the glass today, 35 to 57. They had 21 offensive boards. Obviously, that's because they were missing a ton. That's why they're getting so on. We literally were not missing today. So, there's not opportunities for offensive boards. But the simple fact of it is that they were destroying us on the offensive. They were winning the rebounding battle. Honestly, some of the threes that we did hit, the quality of them was nowhere close to some of the quality shots Boston was getting. Overall, genuinely, the Heat have not blinked this entire postseason, but today I felt like at some points in this game, they were kind of blinking. Some of the things that we were doing wasn't really up to the same like crispness of the previous games. Boston was just that damn bad that they couldn't answer any of it.
That's on their offense, man. Like, Tatum, to me, is probably the most inconsistent superstar we've seen in recent years.
And he had 2 great games, and he was due for a stinker, but a stinker this bad in this moment is absolutely atrocious. And today, you give guys like Marcus Smart the badge of he's the heart of this team and all of that thing. But when he's especially that what should have been a flagrant one, because he definitely swung at Caleb. I don't know why they didn't give him a flagrant one for that one. But to be doing things like that, to be picking up cheap technical fouls when you're already down by 20, to really just be the one that's foul hunting and flopping all over the floor like a fish. If that's your heart, then you deserve everything that comes to you in these playoffs right now. Like,
Yeah, it's very weird to talk about Marcus Smart because it hasn't felt like he's been enough as the vocal leader through the years. And it was Ime Udoka that made the difference a year ago. Do you think he's overrated from like an impact perspective?
is Marcus Smart overrated?
Do we give him too much love? Like we talk about shooting guards sometimes, and not really, but if we're ranking shooting guards, he'll rank rather highly because he is that culture piece and he has been laced into it for years in that winning environment. But there's so much inconsistency to his game today. He goes 2 of 8 from the field. And it's like, well, when you're not going to be that high level impact player defensively, and you got a defensive player of the year last year, which you probably didn't really deserve, but he's a great defender nonetheless. But it's like, how important is he to the Celtics team? Because he's making $19 million, man.
That's what I'm saying. The moment he won a defensive player of the year after Robert Williams went down, when he was in the leading player for your team to win it, that was the moment that I think we're giving him a little too much credit. Marcus Smart right now, yes, he's a very good defender and he's gotten better as a playmaker throughout his career. But the one thing you always needed from him to be consistent is the 3-point shot, and that's never been consistent for him. And overall, his impact, I wouldn't say his impact on this team isn't great because he's the perfect guard for those two, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, because um he doesn't take too many positions away from them, but he knows how to stay in his place offensively while still being the heart and hustle of this team sometimes.
Right.
But yes, the moment he won that defensive player of the year, I think you gave him a little too much credit. And for guys like him, I think $20 million is around where he normally would get paid with how big contracts are now. So I don't think that's too much of the issue. But at the end of the day, yes, the moment he won that defensive player of the year, I think everybody was overstating his impact on this Celtics team in that sense.
And I'm kind of dunking on him from a shooting perspective. Like he's done a good job playmaking. His rebounding too. He had 9 on the glass today. It's really the shooting where it's like, how necessary is he at times? But he's not going to be that elite level defender that you expect. I, I don't even know. Like they're committing $52 million to this big three in the backcourt of Smart, Brogdon, and Marcus. But there's such a lack of consistency from them. And I think it really does stem from your superstar and Jason Tatum does struggle in environments like this against the Miami defense. And they did beat them last year, but it took him barely squeaking out in 7 games. I really do think for the Celtics, the Heat are kind of just like the worst possible matchup for them. Like this is the one team they hate playing against. We saw back in 2017 when Jimmy was in Chicago and Jaylen Brown was a rookie in the NBA. Tatum was still at Duke. I think that the Celtics look much worse in this matchup, really is because of how well the Heat match up defensively. And while I'm giving them a hard time right now, I feel like in a year, we're going to come back to this conversation and they play again. It's going to be like, dude, the Miami Heat are the boogeyman in the East. They've beaten the Bucks now 2 times badly. They've
That's the
slapped the
thing.
Celtics now twice in the playoffs. I think this could end in 4 games, probably 5. They beat them in 6 in the bubble. I don't know, man. Like the Heat to me, over the last 4 years, they've been the best team in the East. And it does feel like after the Bucks title run in 2021, this is the team that everybody hates playing the most.
That's the thing is right now this Miami Heat team they execute well enough to beat everybody else that's not the top 3, that is Philly, Boston, and Milwaukee. And then you match up so well with Boston and Milwaukee that you're constantly in a battle with those teams, even if they're more talented than you. And then you go to like a team like Philadelphia that you can just count on their stars just not showing up, so you don't even bother even looking at them sometimes. But really, go. It is in that scenario where you just so match up so well with the top teams and you're already so good yourself and you're just good enough to also spank the lower teams in the conference that yes, the Heat have taken that position as probably the best team in the conference in the past couple years. But still, but even when the Heat do match up well, the thing we matched up well last year because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown had the problem of one, their handle gets very, very bad during the lower stretch of games, and they are horrible decision makers when play teams sell out on them and they have to make good decisions on drives. You'd hope that that would change at some point, that they would get better at that as young players, as good as they are, and they simply have not. You'd hope that Jason Tatum, whenever you told him to stop going to trying to be mini Kobe and actually do what you're supposed to hit, take threes, go to the rim, and he gotten that much more efficient in the regular season. You'd hope that the efficient in the inconsistent issues in the playoffs when he's not taking those mid-range shots that he's not good at would be at a high level. No, there's games where his 3-point shot disappears. There's games where he can't get to the rim. There's games where he just looks like he's complete lapses and he's just throwing the ball everywhere. Jaylen Brown's tunnel vision has not gotten one lick better in the past 4 years. These are the same problems he had in the bubble. So yes, we're the best matchup for. Yes, you can say we're the best matchup for them. And when they don't freaking improve, last year they were a good matchup because our young players and our undrafted guys. Stop saying people need to stop saying that though, because Reggie Miller was saying that every 5 seconds in that broadcast. But our guys kind of blinked a little bit in the Eastern Conference Finals, and maybe the lights were a little too bright for some of them, and they shot really, really bad, way worse than what you expected them, what you saw from them in the regular season. Now
Right.
they got the
A
experience.
year
Now they're
ago.
ready. Now they're ready for the moment. You see those young guys get better in the series, while the stars on the other side are literally the same players they were last year, if not worse. That's
I
the
mean,
problem here.
real talk, that is the problem. If you were so bored of this game like I was that it was hard to watch in the second
I'm
half,
not bored.
here's what, yeah, I know as a Miami Heat fan, you love it. Here is how the Celtics lose. Caleb Martin outplays Jaylen Brown off the bench. There you go. Jason
Gabe
Tatum
Vincent,
struggles
Gabe
mightily to come
Vincent,
back. And
Gabe
that can really
Vincent,
be the end of it right there.
Gabe Vincent, literally what played like how you expect Jason Tatum to play.
That as well is a great point. He was 11 to 15 today, one of his best playoff performances, and he's had some
His
pretty
best.
huge shots. He's one of the most clutch players in the league, I feel like. He gives me that Devontae Graham vibe where he may shoot 38 or 41%, but he's going to take the toughest shots, and he makes a good amount of them. So I want to ask you this question. How do you feel about the Miami Heat's chances versus the Denver Nuggets? Do you think they're the best matchup they're going to play yet, or do you think Bam's lack of size with Kevin Love's injury could actually be a bigger cause for concern?
So I sent you that compilation today on Twitter, and I looked a little bit deeper in some of the matchups. And Yoki only cooked Bam one full game, and that was when he came down here and he was like 12 for I think 15, and really just destroyed him in that game. But overall, Bam has always been a solid matchup for him, in a sense that he's one of the guys that's able to give him a little bit of trouble. There's games where he held him to 6 for 15. There's games where it was like 9 for 18, and 50% for Nicole Jokic is underperformance. So there I do think we also have the best. They don't have a matchup for Jimmy. Like Aaron Gordon is going to be played off the floor because we're going to do exactly what the Lakers do and force him to be a shooter. And at some point, Mike Malone, when your offense is being clogged like that, you're going to have to make a decision if you want him on the floor or not. And at that point, you don't have anybody that can stay in front of Jimmy. Michael Porter Jr., even with his improvements on defensive end, this is not a matchup that he wants. Jamal Murray, he's going to get hunted. He's going to get hunted with Jimmy Butler because in that starting line, they're going to call screens for him to be the one to guard Jimmy Butler down the stretch.
Right.
So if anything, on the Miami Heat side, I have the utmost confidence in the fact that they can probably get it done. But on the Denver Nuggets side, you have a monster Nikola Jokic that can just shred any offense, any defensive coverage that comes his way. Jamal Murray's on the same heater of a playoff riser that he always is. And that offense is just a buzzsaw coming at you constantly. So even with the Miami Heat having that many advantages, I would say that they can exploit. The Denver Nuggets just keep coming at you offensively that you literally can't blink. And thankfully, we haven't seen the Heat blink all playoffs long. So I do think, if anything, it's going to be a 6 or 7 game series. But I'm going to take the Heat in 6 in my eyes. I'm going to keep rolling my guys until the wheels fall off. So yeah, I do. I think we have a good as chance as anybody.
I've seen a lot
To
of people saying the Nuggets are going to win this championship, and it's written in stone. I'm like, don't say that, because all postseason long, I said the Heat were going to lose in 5 games versus the Bucks, and I was sorely wrong. I thought they would beat the Knicks. Some people thought the Knicks would beat them, and then versus Celtics, they were heavy underdogs. I mean, coming today, they're a 35% chance of winning the series. Everybody's counting them out in this Denver series. I'm telling you right now, do not make that same mistake if you're not a Miami Heat fan. Because like you talked about before, Jamal Murray defensively had some really bad moments and stretches on LeBron James. And if you're playing Jeff Green in the series heavy minutes because Aaron Gordon's not going to make those corner looks where he shot 25% this year, well, now you're relying on one of the more sketchy rotational players in the stage, right? You can't really trust Jeff Green to play more than 25 minutes per. And then the last part, too, is that Jimmy Butler loves to draw fouls. He is going to do everything he can to get Nikola Jokic in foul trouble the way Anthony Davis succeeded in such in game 3. Jokic is not a foul-prone big, but I think the one difference between Miami and the Lakers is that the Heat have so much continuity, a way more established coach, then last but surely not least, a boatload of shooting. And if they can shoot and match as well as the Nuggets do in that series, I don't know, man. I mean, Duncan Robinson's a great example of this. Michael Porter Jr. is going to be chasing him around screens. And while he's defended well, it's not a screen navigation that's part of his repertoire. You then look at Bruce Brown and KCP. I think they'll do a fine job on everybody else, but I even worry about KCP on Jimmy. I don't know if he'll be the consistent
He doesn't have
matchup.
the size. He doesn't have the size. He doesn't have the size to bother Jimmy. That's going to be another
He's six
problem for
five.
him.
He's not
I'm
undersized.
talking about the weight, the strength thing. The same
Right.
thing
I
with
mean,
Grant
he's a
Williams
little
has
bit
the
thinner than
size.
Malcolm Brogdon, and Brogdon did a fine job in this series on Jimmy.
Did he?
I mean, relative to Derek White, he did a great job on Jimmy.
I
He was their
mean,
best matchup on Butler
at the end
among
of
the
the day,
backcourt players.
I guess, but at the end of the day, Jimmy was cooking every single one of them the first two games. But another thing today is that's going to be probably instrumental in that Nugget series is definitely Duncan, and the simple fact that he's superior to Strus in the sense that decision making coming off those DHO actions has been impeccable. Teams are selling out on him when he's coming off screen, so he's cutting backdoor to get easy layups all the damn time. But whenever he's in that DHO action with Bam and he doesn't have the shot and he just takes the ball off the dribble and then he's somehow gotten such a nice touch on the floater or when to throw the alley oop to Bam that he's almost just as good as Tyler in those situations sometimes.
Right, but
And
the
that's
difference is Strus gives him the transition element, and he's a solid defender. So, I mean, it's like thing one and thing two with them. When they're both hitting, it's an issue, and that's what I'm worried about for my Denver Nuggets.
very true.
I still got
Well,
us winning though because I just have so much faith in Jamal Murray. And how is Gabe Vincent screen navigation? Because Dennis Schroeder defended Jamal very well in Game 3, and it didn't matter.
there's nobody on this team that's a better screen navigator than Gabe because he's small, so he can get skinny around those screens a lot and really body you up.
Mhm.
Um, there's a reason why that even though Jalen Brunson was scoring as much as he did, he wasn't getting an open shot. He was doing all uncontested shot because Gabe was picking up for 48 minutes he was on the floor. He was picking up 94 feet and getting around every single screen and making it difficult. He's a great screen navigator. It just all depends on um it just really all depends on if Jamal Murray is going to hit those contested shots like he was against LA and how quickly he heats up. And another thing is the Heat, unlike Darvin Ham and Missoula, because Darvin Ham waits a little too long to call those timeouts too. Eric Spoelstra doesn't care. Eric Spoelstra, we were up by 34. They went on a 5-0 run. They could lead to 29. And he called the timeout. So yes, let's stop this bleeding. Do you know how insane and psychotic that is to call a timeout because you want to stop the bleeding up 29? And that's another thing the reason the C team works so well is because as much as they call Jimmy a dog and call Jimmy like he's a psychopath, a serial killer in the brain, and every player feeds off of that. Our coach is just as much as a psychopath as he is.
They're both psychos, but I'd say Spo is the bigger one.
Honestly,
I think we've seen Spo as a psychopath in a good way. You seen the clip of Jamal Murray running a pickup in a local Boston
Jamal
gym,
Crawford.
and then Spo and Karan. What'd I say?
You said Jamal Murray.
Good. Well, Jamal Murray should be the only thing on my mind. Well, Jamal Crawford is running a little 5-and-5 at a local Boston gym, and it's Eric Spoelstra off the elliptical and Karan Butler watching. I'm like, they're literally scouting Jamal fucking Crawford. It's hysterical. But I think Eric Spoelstra, he's outcoached everyone up until this point. Michael Malone's done a fantastic job this postseason. The question is, can he hold his weight against the Spo? Do you think Eric Spoelstra with the finals appearance can make himself a top 5 coach of all time?
Easily.
Because we look at the company we got Pop, we've got Phil, Red, and Pat Riley. After those 4, there is a 5th spot open, whether you want to give it to Chuck Daly, Red Holzman, Lenny Wilkins, Don Nelson. But some of those guys only have 1 championship. Eric Spoelstra gave himself a 3rd title this year. Technically a 4th because you on the 07 staff. Or 06.
Yeah, if he gets another ring, I would put him in that top 5 conversation. The thing about him and Mike Malone coaching philosophy at itself is that the fact that Michael Malone hasn't had to out scheme a coach this good yet. He had the schematic and talent advantage against the Timberwolves easily. I think he's a better coach than Chris Finch. Chris Finch is still the coach, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so he had the talent over them. Who did they play in the second round?
Monty Williams.
Phoenix Suns. Monty Williams. It was not that hard to scheme against the Phoenix Suns. Just let Kevin Durant and Devin Booker do what they do because they're not going to be able to keep this shit up. And And then against the Los Angeles Lakers right now, Darvin Ham still refuses to take D'Angelo Russell out this freaking game, and they've been abusing him this entire series. So I think he's gotten away with a little bit. And he hasn't had to adjust as much as he's going to have to in this series because Spo is not going to let them be comfortable in anything that they want to try to be in, and that's obviously on the players to execute the way they should. The Miami Heat has executed so well, and they literally play every possession like they're going to freaking die if they don't do it right. That I don't think this is the moment they're going to blink and not execute the way they're supposed to. And of course, you have the killer on that end that can be an encore coach, Nikola Jokic, that probably shred those defensive coverages because I don't think the zone will probably be as effective with him on the floor. But I think the where Miami Heat do need to do is they need to go at Nikola Jokic as much as they can. He doesn't draw too many fouls, but you try to get him some foul trouble, hopefully with Jimmy and Bam, get him up the court. You try to tire him out a little bit, and then hopefully after that, when it gets down deeper into the game, you can at least try to contain that two-man game with him and Jamal Murray as much as you can. And
That's about right.
Keep them off the glass. Please, for God's sakes, keep Denver off the glass.
But probably the biggest concern for the Nuggets is that their only bench player is Bruce Brown.
Yeah, they're gonna. That's another thing. The Miami Heat are going to have to always win those non-Nikola Jokic minutes.
It's sad. I'm a little bit worried about that, man. I'd be lying to you if it wasn't. It's going to be a great series, but Caleb Martin.
I'm on the same end where I'm worried about them.
Caleb Martin's doing his best Bruce Brown impression right now, and Kyle Lowry, he's the man. He has been so huge for them and checked off most of the boxes they were looking for when they signed him.
Yes, sir. Well, this has been another stream. I didn't expect to come in here. I expected to come in here up 3-0. I didn't expect to come in here with this emphatic of a win. Video will be out in 2 hours at the latest. I already have everything on the timeline ready to go and ready to actually edit it. But with that being said, thank you, John, for showing up again. Amazing performance. Tomorrow will maybe be on your stream after hopefully your Nuggets finish off that series. Honestly, I want LeBron and the Lakers to get one, just one. Let Denver finish it off let Denver finish it off at home. Yeah. Feeling real nice right now.
You should. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
No problem, man. I want